הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. How good it is and how pleasant that we are all here together. How good it is and how pleasant that loved ones can be together. Oh, how good it is that best friends are here together, and how pleasant that neighbors can be together. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. How good it is and how pleasant that we are all here together. I am so honored to be here with you today in this exquisite sanctuary for the commissioning of the Caring Connections team. Reverend Pamela has shared with me the diversity of the work you do in the congregation, each of you dedicating your particular gifts and life experience in hospitality for those you care for. In learning about your core values, I have come to appreciate the many aspects of hospitality in Unitarian Universalism. Through your Caring Connections team, you foster a sense of belonging where people feel seen, heard, and supported, recognizing that we are all part of a larger interconnected web of community and of life. This morning, I'd like to explore with you the connection between hospitality and a relational God. Perhaps this discernment will deepen how we engage with the divine, as well as with one another, in the sacred work of outreach we practice. Patients or spiritual seekers I meet through my work often ask me, how can I enter into relationship with the divine? They'll say, I believe in spirit as process. I experience a higher source in the wonders and mysteries of nature, but I don't feel that God knows or cares about me or intervenes in my life in any way. Some who ask yearn for a relational connection with a personal God. Others may be more curious than committed to the idea. Let's focus our exploration of the theme of hospitality and a relational God by taking a look at the story of the patriarch Abraham and the matriarch Sarah in the book of Genesis, chapter 18, verses 1 through 15. This story is part of the weekly portion from the Torah, or Pentateuch, which was chanted just yesterday in synagogue. Here's a brief synopsis. God appears to Abraham by a grove of trees while he's sitting at the entrance of his tent in the heat of the day. Abram looks up, sees three figures standing near him. He turns toward them, runs to greet them, insisting they remain to rest and eat a morsel of bread he will bring them. They agree. His wife Sarah and their servant prepare a sumptuous meal which Abraham serves to the visitors. One of them asks where Sarah is. Abraham says she's in the tent. The visitor promises that when he comes by the following year, Sarah will have given birth to a son. Sarah laughs to herself, as she and Abraham are very old. The messenger reprimands her, saying that nothing is too wondrous for God. Sarah is fearful and denies that she laughed. What strikes us as interesting here? Firstly, the setting. Abram and Sarah's tent is situated close by a grove of notable trees, terebinth or oak trees, no doubt its sacredness going back to primeval times. Abraham most likely felt the mystery of this site in the past, having dedicated an altar there earlier in his nomadic wanderings and meetings with God. Abram is sitting at the entrance to his tent during the hottest part of the day. We know from earlier in the story that he had just undertaken the ritual of circumcision as a sign of the covenant God had made with him. In fact, some medieval rabbinic commentators maintain that God is visiting Abraham here at the beginning of this episode to see how he is recovering from his circumcision. They even claim that the significant obligation in Jewish life of visiting the sick originates here with God's visit to Abraham. Abram looks up and sees three visitors. In Hebrew, they are called anashim, men. Despite his fatigue, Abram's reaction is instantaneous, decisive, and wholehearted. He runs towards the visitors, bowing to the ground. He offers them food, water, and rest, personally attends to their needs, and walks with them to see them off when they depart. It may not be clear initially to us, or perhaps to Abraham, what makes these visitors unusual. Rabbinic tradition interprets them as being angels, or at least messengers of the divine. The portrayal of angelic messengers as humans perhaps also suggests that the author wants to open the possibility here for Abram to engage with them in a relational and hospitable way. Key to Abram's hospitality in this narrative is the food he arranges for the guests. I'm always charmed by how Abram modestly describes the meal he will prepare for the visitors as being just a morsel of bread. The bountiful feast Abram then offers is described by the tradition as a sign of Abram's humility and of his generosity, and a fulfillment of the important Jewish religious commandment of hospitality. The theme of hospitality is thus enacted here at this foundational moment for Abraham and his future descendants. Perhaps because of this, and also given the uncanny setting and remarkable visitation by the messengers, the theme of hospitality feels more elevated, more broadly resonant and inclusive, taking on for me the character of radical hospitality. Radical hospitality and hospitality share many qualities. Let's take a moment to look at the differences between them and see how radical hospitality manifests in our story about Abraham, Sarah, and the visitors. Traditional hospitality generally involves inviting guests who are familiar or who fit within certain social or cultural norms. Radical hospitality, on the other hand, emphasizes a more inclusive approach. It reflects a deliberate effort to reach out beyond comfort zones, embracing those who might feel unwelcome or outcast in other contexts. In Abram's story, the appearance of the three visitors, strangers to Abraham and even to the human realm, is unexpected. Yet Abram invites them in, offering them food, rest, and care. Regular hospitality is often reactive, responding to needs as they arise when someone is in immediate need of care. In contrast, radical hospitality is proactive. The host actively seeks out opportunities to welcome others, particularly those who might be ignored or shunned by society. As we know from our own experiences, radical hospitality is often not easy on the host. It requires us sometimes to embrace discomfort and make personal sacrifices for the sake of another's well-being. In our story, Abraham, though physically debilitated, eagerly goes out to meet the three strangers, insisting they partake of his generous hospitality. Hospitality can be transactional. The host provides care in exchange for social connection or as part of fulfilling cultural expectations. Radical hospitality, on the other hand, involves a much deeper level of commitment. It may require ongoing support and is often transformative, affecting both the host and the guest by forming lasting relationships that break down barriers and foster understanding. In Abraham's story, the ongoing depth of commitment is indeed transformative. The narrative in Genesis 18 is an affirmation of the covenant between Abraham, his descendants, and God. Interestingly, the elaborate banquet at the center of this story is symbolic of this transformative moment. In the Bible, meals often accompany the establishment or reaffirmation of covenants, agreements or promises between God and humans. In Genesis 18, the meal leads directly to confirmation of Sarah's future child, making it a moment of promise and blessing, of revelation and of transformation. Finally, while regular hospitality is often a social practice, radical hospitality is frequently connected to a deeper moral or spiritual calling that aligns with core values of compassion, justice, and community. Rabbinic sources consistently elevate hospitality as a positive commandment that takes precedence even over religious rituals and personal piety. In Jewish religious and moral practice, as in Unitarian Universalism, welcoming of guests is both a communal obligation and a personal commitment. So where is the divine in all of this? In what ways can radical hospitality bring the divine closer to us? In what way can it bring us into a more engaged relationship with the divine, both as a community and as individuals? I'd like to suggest that God, at least the God of the Hebrew Bible, manifests where hospitality is enacted in relationships between people, not only as part of that relationship, but also at times as a separate entity and witness. The story of Abram and the visitors is interesting to me because of the abundance of divine presence in it. There is some discussion in the rabbinic sources around whether God in the story is a distinct entity from the three angelic messengers. Although the messengers are divinely sent, I do believe that the authors of this story want us to see that they are differentiated from the divine. That for Abraham to fully engage in a covenant with God, he needs to exercise his human capacity to connect in a relationship of radical hospitality with the visitors. Consequently, it's right and proper that Abraham interrupt his initial encounter with the divine so that he can attend to the visitors. The implication is that without this prioritization of radical hospitality, Abram's ongoing relationship with God might not have developed as fully. Because Abraham chooses to attend to the three visitors, he is then able to engage in future encounters with God in a more autonomous and relational way. I'm reminded of one of the most well-known and striking rabbinic teachers on hospitality from the Talmud, with the rabbi's comment of Abraham's actions here in Genesis 18. Welcoming guests, they say, is greater than receiving the divine presence. Abram's act of interrupting his interaction with God to go out and to receive the three visitors is deemed by the rabbis to be more important than continuing in his interaction with God in the moment. I believe that the radical hospitality Abram extends to his visitors enables him to model human initiative, choice, generosity, humility, receptivity to the unexpected, and true dialogue. This then impacts his relationship with the divine, moving it from perhaps being more formal and receiving on his part to one of lively exchange, persuasiveness, and even disagreement. These are qualities we see in the conversation between God and Abraham about the fate of Sodom and Gomorrah, which immediately follows our story in Genesis 18. Sarah's role is also significant in this context, warranting a sermon in its own right. Her doubts remind us that challenge, skepticism, and systemic location are also key elements in a fully relational engagement with the divine. In this model of divine-human relationality, God is changed also. From a rabbinical commentary on Genesis 18, we learn that the first act of divine shelter was not God's hospitality towards us, but Abraham's hospitality towards God and the three visitors. According to the rabbinic account, human initiative and not divine action began the relationship of sheltering between the people Israel and God that is such a significant aspect of their ongoing interaction through the Bible. In the context of our exploration today of radical hospitality and of relationship with the divine, let me leave you with just one story from my chaplaincy practice. It is a story of recognizing sacred space and of invoking divine presence through mutual offering and receiving. For me, it resonates with both Abraham's story and perhaps with some of your experiences, dear companions in service, in the radical hospitality you offer to members of your community. Not too long ago, I was called by the care team at the hospital where I work to visit with a patient who wanted to leave the hospital against medical advice so that they could go and pray at their church. In speaking with the patient, I learned that they had miraculously survived a potentially catastrophic accident. They were filled with gratitude and wanted to go to church to thank God for having saved them and also to forgive the person who had caused their accident. I asked them if they felt that the hospital room was a safe and potentially spiritual place for them at that moment. Perhaps we could look upon it as our church, I suggested. They held out their hands to me and requested prayer. I invited them to lead us and then responded with prayer and song. The patient then said to me, "You are my pastor. I feel God in this space. I feel God's energy moving through our hands and all down my body. I feel God's energy leaving this room and flowing through the corridors out of the door of the hospital, flowing out into the street and through all the streets of the city and through the whole world. God is here with us. May the divine be with us through our work of service, our kinship, our friendship, our healing and binding and raising up of each other. May the source shelter us all beneath a welcoming tabernacle of compassion and of inclusiveness. And may we each come to know the divine as a relational presence, each according to our own need and in our own way. Amen.
Con